Hi everyone. Today I am discussing this question: contributions of Immanuel Wallerstein to world system approach that you study within international relationships, and then we're studying the different approaches like liberalism, Marxism, etc. You come across this approach, and also this particularly speaks of system approach. If you have some idea on system approach of David Eaton, then and then rise of behavioralism in 1950s, and then Immanuel Wallenstein tried to incorporate all those elements and also principles of neocolonialism into his world system approach. So I will explain about this system, this or his approach. To understand that, we need to understand why Marxism or a radical approach helps, or how it helps in understanding the exploitation sustained by developed countries over third world or developing countries. So this theory basically developed by or at the initial stages conceptualized by Lenin and then Kwame Nkrumah. The Lenin says in his theory of imperialism, um, capitalist countries like US or UK, they continue to sustain some form of domination over colonial countries uh, by method of economy or international economy. That's what he says in his theory of imperialism, like how imperialism continues to persist in the name of economy. May not be polity, because what they had is earlier is the political control. So when political control is gone, what they look for is the economic control. Through the economic control, they continue to have a say, or they continue to hold uh, to the imperialism. So that's what Lenin says. And then further, the Nigerian theorist, he Kwame Nkrumah, uh, you can also see him in non-aligned movement. He developed theory of neocolonialism. Like he says, it's the last stage of imperialism because capitalist countries or the developed countries are still trying one or other ways to exploit. He says, though the Nigeria has got independence, it's for the namesake, and then the independence is not meaningful because the continued economic exploitation the countries, in general, the African countries experiences. He says, though with the independence, the political colonialism has come to an end, but the economic colonialism, that he calls it as a neocolonialism, that continues to sustain. So this is the background for radical or Marxist approach. Why they are Marxist approach? Because the base and the groundwork is economy, uh, and then the exploitation of developed or developing countries or the third world countries. So this also has a resemblance to bourgeois and proletariat. The capitalists or the bourgeois are seen as developed countries, and then proletariats are seen in the form of developing countries, other third world countries. So that's why, since it's based on the basement is economy, so that's why it's a Marxist approach, where economy decides many things, even polity, culture, etc. So this is the background for the Marxist approach. So the later, this background was developed by neo-radical school or dependency school. They gave more systematic way to approach the theory of neocolonialism, especially the scholars like A.G. Frank or Cardoso. What they say is, we can conceptualize this model into a core and periphery, where core is nothing but developed countries, and then periphery is third world countries. The core is technologically advanced, are capitalist, they are having military power, and with all those factors, they are able to manufacture finished goods with the import of the raw material from third world countries, and the third world countries continue to depend on the core countries for the finished products. We had the same experience even in case of India. When India became a colonial country, India used to export the cotton and then import the ready-made garments. The same thing continued to happen, and then this was systematically given as a core and periphery theory by A.G. Frank. And also he proposes the concept of development of underdevelopment. So what he is saying is, the underdevelopment continues to develop, and the third world countries which are already poor become much more poorer. That's what the theory of development of underdevelopment. So all they are saying is, developed countries are not helping in any way. They continue to sustain their colonialism through the economy. This is what said by the dependency school. Even scholars like Paul Baran, Raul Prebisch, Santos, and Cardoso, All these thinkers, they take the same opinion as A.G. Frank, but they say it in different names. They say that third world countries are satellites of developed countries. They continue to depend. And then this also exemplifies a system of unequal exchanges. And then they are critical of basically Ricardo and Adam Smith. If you have some idea on principles of liberalism or neoliberalism, where um, the Adam Smith says the state should not interfere in the market economy, and then state should act as a night watchman because he leaves everything to the market force. And such principles are highly criticized by Marxists because they undermine the power of the market. Whether market can really develop people, it's itself a big debate. Whether market can, how far it can help, etc. But considering the Marxist perspective, they are critical of any form of liberalism and neoliberalism. And then you can also remember A.G. Frank in his work Capitalism and Underdevelopment has given this theory of core and periphery and its characteristics of core and periphery. The scholars like Samir Amin, they apply this to Asian countries, could be Asian countries and also South African countries. They extensively studies Nigeria and how the unequal exchanges uh, are further uh, uh, impoverishing the South African states. So this is the background of dependency school and then their characteristics of core and periphery. So far what we have seen is like there are two entities like core and periphery and their characteristics. Then how core continues to exploit the periphery with the backing of Marxist school. So considering or coming to the world system approach given by Immanuel Wallerstein. So what he does, he takes the A.G. Frank model, which is the dependency theory, and then he extends to the scale, the world scale. He says the whole world or the international economy can be characterized into core, semi-periphery, and periphery. The semi-periphery is one level that's added by the world system approach given by Immanuel Wallerstein. So why world system approach is necessary? To understand the how unequal exchanges of production or supply of raw material and the exploitation that can be studied not just for one or two countries, that can be studied across the countries by applying this principle. So he relies on the principles of Marxism and principles of the system approach that is given by David Eaton, etc., where they employ scientificism and the principles of behavioralism, etc. Uh, and then with the backing of the Marxism, uh, they extend the concept of the dependency theory. They argue that the world international economy can be characterized or can be seen as core, semi-periphery, and periphery, as you're seeing in the diagram. So I have highlighted the arrow marks where or how the raw materials are supplied. The core, considering say US, imports the raw material even from the periphery, which are third world countries, or semi-periphery, which acts as a buffer. For example, you can see in developing nations like India, or could be Bangladesh, or could be some South Asian or Southeastern countries can act as a buffer, and then some Saharan states, African states, Uganda, Kenya, they can be periphery. They are third world countries or underdeveloped countries. They are not even developing countries. So what happens? Uh, the periphery and then semi-periphery both continues to export raw material. Periphery exports raw material to core and also semi-periphery. Semi-peripheral countries like India, they are kind of a mixed economy where you still see agricultural practices and also some form of industry developed. So they are capable of manufacturing some goods and also have ability to export. Like India does a lot of export even in the Bangladesh. So the semi-periphery continues to exploit the periphery. The now the burden on the peripheral countries are two-way. They are getting exploited by core and also by semi-periphery. So in this way, he applied this model at a scale and gives this concept like how the exploitation continues to persist even with a lot of way of democratization. Though the principles of colonialism is overthrown in the political space, and then no one wants to be ruled by any other developing countries, but the ruling has sustained in a different form, is what this theory says. And then he also says the present world is controlled by capitalist in his book Capitalist World Economy. And such minute details are important if you're targeting KSET or net exams because they in math the following questions they ask like who wrote this book or other theories. So the essence of world system approach is like how he extrapolated the dependency theory and applied to the whole world economy. That's the essence of Immanuel Wallerstein. Further, he also speaks of geoculture. It is not how such system is sustained. As we see, the liberal ideas are exported, uh, and the liberal values are also exported from the developed countries to developing countries in the name of globalization or other ways too. So when such liberal principles are exported, and even in the name of democracy, when there is a larger acceptance of such values by peripheral or semi-peripheral states, then such states they continue to depend. For example, you can apply this concept to lots of issues that we are seeing in the name of globalization. So recently, there are lots of issues with respect to the subsidies in WTO or how e-commerce should be done. And then if you take any free trade agreements, they are mostly skewed. Whether India has really benefited from the economic globalization is a debatable topic. Some people say India has benefited. Some people say that it has not much benefited. And then there are a lot of issues in international organizations like UN, IMF, etc. Considering that, uh, whether the export of such liberal ideas has really helped is always a debatable question. So, but Immanuel Wallenstein says, through the principles of such liberal values, uh, this world economy or capitalist economy they continues to sustain. He also provides a future world system like since it's based on economy, the economy experiences booms and recession. So he calls it as a cyclical rhythm. And also he says, and then this cycle decays. For example, if there is a boom and if there is a recession, and also if when the further boom happens, it may not come to the original level of economy. It continues to decay on every cycle. So there is a degeneration. So that's why he says like capitalism digs its own grave. So how capitalism digs its own grave, this can also be seen from the perspective of peripheral states, semi-peripheral states, because capitalism exploits semi-peripheral states, but semi-peripheral states suffer the problems of low wage rates, and also there are many economic problems. But the expectation of core countries, our core countries expect semi-peripheral countries to work efficiently or supply good raw materials, etc. But due to the exploitation, the semi-peripheral countries cannot match the expectations of core countries. So it is like this: when semi-peripheral countries work well, the core countries or core states perform well. If the semi-peripheral they do not perform well, the core eventually it affects the cores also. So, uh, for example, say if you can compare to a typical factory or an industry, uh, if the owner or the proprietor of the industry wants to uh, earn well or make it profitable, he has to keep their employees happy. He cannot continue to exploit. Through exploitation, he can make a short-term benefits, but unless he keep the employees engaged, keep they're happy, and then keep innovative work culture, he cannot see the profit in the long term. So that is the reason he says capitalism digs its own grave. If the capitalism they do not take care of periphery and then core countries, ultimately it will affect the core itself. And then he also suggests in that case, um, the world or the system has to look for socialist model. Otherwise, it will lead to the collapse of the world system. So these are the main points under world system approach, right? But obviously, there should be some criticism to the world system approach. What are the criticisms? Um, Wallenstein says world has exploited the periphery and then semi-periphery. Does that mean that none of the countries have gained? This also has sync with globalization, right? Because through globalization, many have gained. If you see India, India has economically forwarded with the help of globalization. It could be in terms of per capita income, becoming the one of the top 10 largest economy, etc. So it has helped to reduce the poverty level, improve the infrastructures of the health and education, and also many countries like tiger economies, Southeast countries, Southeast Asian countries. They're able to mix the Asian values and also liberal ideas and able to perform well, especially the South Korea, which became export led. You can take example of even China when it became market focused after 1970s. They all benefited from liberal values or by adopting liberalism in market economy. So we cannot really say is, the periphery and then semi-periphery did not benefit at all. And also the one of the major criticism on the Marxists, they completely rely on economy and then they completely neglect gender aspects, racism, and also domestic factors. If some countries is not performing well, that doesn't mean that it's only because of the exploitation by the core. The country may have domestic problems. Take an example of Nigeria or any other country in this Africa. They couldn't able to sustain the democracy. There were authoritarian governments. There were coups. The domestic factors contributes to its underdevelopment. Underdevelopment is not exactly because of the economic factors. This major criticism on the Marxist model. So these are the key points which I wanted to highlight. Just to recap, it started with the political economy or the Marxist approach uh, given by Lenin and also Nkrumah. Then later it developed into a dependency school of core and periphery, and also theory of development of underdevelopment, and then how unequal exchanges. This is the dependency model. Dependency model is further extended by Immanuel Wallerstein. He added semi-peripheral level to the core and periphery and then make it more comprehensive. And also he says speaks of what sustains a system and also future world system. And also some criticisms we looked into it. All these points I tried to combine and then put it to an answer. Since there are lots of information, it's very difficult to write it in 150 words. So what I made it, I will just read it or just glance it. I brought how Lenin and Nkrumah and also Baran, Prebisch, etc. They conceptualized theory of the core and periphery. Then Wallenstein extended this theory by adding another level. Like core stands for developed semi-periphery, blah blah blah. Right. So I also wrote this diagram. That itself took one page. Then, as a Marxist argue, core continues to exploit others, core being technologically advanced, supply finished products, while periphery export raw materials. This leads to development of underdevelopment of the periphery. Another paragraph, okay. Then semi-peripheral states like India has a mix of both agriculture and industry. They act as a buffer and exploit periphery and exploited by the core. They export finished goods, etc. So I'm just giving the characteristics of what is core, periphery, and semi-periphery. Okay, thus Wallenstein, there is a spelling mistake. Apply a system approach influenced by behavioral to world level. Okay. Then I'm trying to add some more points like since the question is on the also elaboration and so some criticism. Wallenstein speaks of geoculture, which sustains the system through liberalism and scientific temper. Wallenstein also speaks of collapse of the world system, where capitalism dictates its own way by exploiting semi-periphery and periphery. However, he fails. So this is the criticism part. Fails to highlight domestic factors in exploitation and development. So there is no agreement on the solution, like what should be the solution for this model, whether should we really go for socialism, etc. And also he fails to account for radicalism and also gender issues. This is said by Patrick Bond. Okay, so then I try to bring some current affairs example. Continued exploitation by China over South Africa, so that some scholars call it as a new dependency, highlights the relevance of world system approach, like why world system approach is relevant. And also you can also end by uh, like how regulation can help to control the economy. So that's another way of concluding the answer, right? And also any form of criticism or how do you balance liberalism and Marxism could be another form of conclusion. So since it is for 15 marker, I could able to write only 3 pages. Had it been uh, like other points, which could have been the part of answer. If it is for 20 marker, or if you wish to write more points, like how Wallenstein brought attention to international political economy, because he explains the futility of organization despite having World Bank, UN, and IMF, right? So they are not much helpful because of a lot of issues that are currently being faced, especially in terms of equality. And then the greatness of this approach or the Marxism is they offers a credible criticism on the liberal school, which none of the other school can able to do it, right? Yeah. So that's all. That's all I wanted to speak about um, world system approach. Please comment if there are any confusions or need clarifications on what I spoke. I will try to make some more videos like this. Please provide if you have any feedbacks on this type of videos in general. or what do you feel about the pace I speak, or in general about this lecture. I don't call it as a lecture, but yeah, the way I'm approaching some form of discussion and engaging with you. Okay, you can feel free to comment. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much.